Hello and welcome to the Curing Retinal Blindness Foundation YouTube page, and welcome to the first episode of our brand new interview series, Eyeing Progress. I'm your host, Mitchell Smedley. This is the show where we take you behind the scenes and take a look at every facet of retinal blindness diseases and all the research going into them right now. And I couldn't think of a better first guest to have on the show. She is the author of the book, Thriving Blind, a TEDx speaker, Champion of Hope Award winner, and the founder of the Curing Retinal Blindness Foundation, Kristin Smedley. Yes, she's also my mother. How you doing, Kristin? How are you?
Oh, where's the round of applause and all of the people cheering? Mitchell, it's good to see
They
you.
cheer when they want to. They cheer when there's something to cheer about.
Wow. Wow. We're
And
going to
we're
just go
off,
right
right?
there. We're
We
going right
are off.
there.
Oh, man. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. And yeah, we're going to go. I hope you're ready. I hope you like talking a lot because we have quite a few questions for you regarding rare eye disease research. So
Me
get ready.
talking? Are you
I
kidding
know,
me?
right? Yeah, that's actually the real reason she's the first guest. I wanted to find someone that I was sure would be able to fill enough time. So
Oh, well, we're trying to keep this to 20 minutes for folks. So let's see if we
yeah,
can do that. That's like the big
well, you never know.
challenge.
Yeah, we might have the Kristin Smedley interview parts 1 through 12.
Okay. And
That'll supply us for 3
everyone
months, right?
everyone that knows me is like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Yep, 1 through 12. All right. We have a serious show
Yes,
to do.
absolutely, we do. A lot of really important stuff to start off. So let's just dive right in after stalling for, I'd say, enough time. Let's talk about your Curing Retinal Blindness Foundation. I want to know how and why you started it.
Well, okay, look, Mitch, you've known me for 20 and a half years. I am not
Don't
exactly
remind me.
the likely candidate that you go, who do we think would be the best person to start a global research foundation and get a very rare eye disease into treatments and cures? Oh, Kristin Smedley. No, I was a third grade teacher. I was a third grade teacher that then happened upon CRB1, rare eye disease, I can talk, by accident. I always say I started out as the accidental advocate when you and Michael were born and diagnosed with CRB1. But I will say this, back then in 2000 and 2003, they told me both times, both diagnoses 3 years apart, that there was maybe in 50 years, there'd be some hope in 50 years for treatment, let alone cure. And so I actually think these days when I watch people with all of the hope that they have, and we'll talk about that later, I get a little nervous that they're not going out and guiding their blind kids to thrive. It was good for me that I just had no hope. Sometimes no hope is a good thing because I had to just go and find you guys the tools for blindness so you could live incredible lives. However, right when, we didn't know it was CRB1 in the very beginning. It took about 9 years, with technology back then to give us this specific gene. So it was in '09 when I got the phone call from Eric Pierce, who was in Philly and he's now at Mass Eye and Ear, and said, guess what? They finally found the gene at CRB1. Mitch, I don't even know if I told you this story before. I'm telling you, within days of hanging up that phone, I happened to remember we used to watch Good Morning America all the time?
All the time, yeah, right before school.
Yeah, and you wanted to be Sam Champion, but then you kinda went in a different
No,
direction, so
you wanted me to be Sam Champion. I wanted to be George Stephanopoulos, if only for the name.
to try to spell that last name.
I,
But anyway,
I couldn't imagine.
on that show and a few others on the major airwaves, Gene Bennett was on and talking about this possible cure for another form, another gene with that's a sister gene of CRB1. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I called Gene and Eric Pierce. Gene, we're
Called
best
Gene to
friends.
talk about the genes, right?
Called Gene to talk about the genes. And I was like, wait a minute, how can we be next?
Were you
And
wearing jeans at the time?
I should just say yes, because that would be an epic twist to this.
You're probably in like sweatpants, right?
Me? That's shocking.
It's where you do
Sweatpants.
most of your advocacy. You
I
know,
know, right?
you're
And
you're a woman of the
slippers.
people.
I'm
Yeah, with
I'm a
Two
woman that
dogs running
has
around all the time.
it's my laundry piles are way too big, ladies and gentlemen, so I just keep wearing sweatpants. But anyway, so yeah, then all of a sudden our that was RPE 65, which folks now know as Luxturna is the treatment for that gene. That
So
opened the door for us.
how is that related to CRB1?
Okay. So you're gonna have to have scientists on to give a real scientific
Right.
description.
In your description, right? I'm
I'll
going to
give
ask
you
the
the
same thing, and I don't know if I'll ever understand it when this series is done. But
I'll give you the
this
Kristin
is
Smedley
step one.
special. This is the Kristin Smedley special. Picture an umbrella, right? There's an umbrella that is all of rare eye disease. In there, there's another umbrella that is retinitis pigmentosa. Under that umbrella is Leber's congenital amaurosis. And under Leber's congenital amaurosis, I believe now they know 25 or 30 genes that cause it.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. So I always thought LCA and RP were just two separate conditions that maybe had similar effects, but were two separate conditions, just both blindness. Okay, so LCA is a subset of RP.
Yeah. Now, when you talk to
Okay.
the researchers, however specialized they are, some of them will tell you they are completely different diseases. But for
Okay.
all of the rest of us, we say it's under this umbrella. So basically, LCA is the juvenile onset form of RP. It's just an early
Interesting.
onset.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's when in life you get it is the distinction.
Yeah, and lucky for us in CRB1 because we are the overachievers of the diseases. We have early onset and later onset. We have LCA
Look at
and
us.
RP. Mhm.
Look at us.
We're amazing.
Okay. Awesome. So CRB1, um, that's the gene, right? That's the one specific
Yes.
gene that is causing mine and my brothers, I would assume.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's
Awesome.
the gene causing LCA for you guys. Yeah, so we found that out, and then I saw the that news, and then I talked to the folks that knew what was going on in scientific research, and I said, "How does it get started?" And a typical, I mean, now this was almost 13 years ago, a typical scientific grant back then to start investigating a disease like this one was $100,000 a year for 3 years. Like that's basically where you begin to just get things moving and start, right?
That's
Everybody's
where you
got to
get people
start
to be like,
somewhere.
all right, I'll look into it, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. That's not even like, yeah, we have this idea for a cure, might not work yet. That's just research. What is this thing? What might we need to do maybe down the line? That's those first 3 years.
Yeah, that's a typical just curiosity looking into it at an academic institution somewhere.
Sure. Okay.
Very
And what
basic science.
institution did we get going at?
Well, interestingly enough, Mitchell, it turned out that there was one person in the world that had just started investigating and taking a look at CRB1, and that was Jan Weinholz out in the Netherlands.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and actually, it was a grant, a bigger grant from the Foundation Fighting Blindness that he was working with that money to start looking at CRB1. So you know me, right? I find out about him, so I just kind of like sat home and prayed that he would continue. Nah. I emailed him. I came to find out later, people don't really do that.
Really?
I
It's your
found
first
him.
instinct.
I'll tell you this. So this is the coolest story. I found Jan and I found his email and I sent him a message and I said, basically, I'm a crazy mom. Just found out, gave him the story I just gave you guys in a very shorter form, if you can imagine. And I said, I heard that you're working on CRB1 and please don't ever stop. I said some very sweet things and thanked him. I was very, very, very grateful because he was the only person in the world that cared to know anything about this disease. And I sent him, this was the key. I sent him a picture of you and Michael and said, these are the faces that you're working for. I found out later, a couple of years later, from someone in his lab, he took that email, he showed it to his entire team, his entire lab, and he put
Wow.
copies of yours and Michael's pictures around the lab.
Wow. I feel like I should be signing one of those college football NIL deals.
Isn't that great? That's the kind of guy that Jan Weinholz is, though.
That's amazing.
This is an
That's
incredibly
fantastic.
complicated disease. He's been working on it for years and he's made some recent incredible progress. But for somebody, I mean, can you imagine, Mitch? You're like, imagine working on a scientific problem or a math problem for like
Oh, and you
10
just can't
years and it
figure it
just
out.
won't work
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. And you're just
It-
in this lab all day, every day, poring over the same numbers, the same tables and all that. And wow, sometimes that's what you need is just a little bit of motivation. That's fantastic.
yeah, he's that kind of guy though. He's a good guy.
So how'd you go from what he was doing out in the Netherlands to bringing that to the States and getting your foundation going?
Well, I know that there are some not so great things that happen because of social media, but especially back, 13 years ago, social media really was what it was designed to be: social
Yeah. Yep.
connection, not what it's become, right? So I literally put a post on Facebook and said, my kids have LCA and we just found out it's the CRB1 gene. Is anyone out there that has a kid like mine? And 10 families from all over the country
10 families.
responded to me. I
Wow.
think maybe a few more did, and I just said, who wants to, here's what I'm gonna do. Here's here's what I'm gonna do.
No brainstorming, no consideration. Here's the deal.
Here's what I think should happen.
Executive order.
We're gonna start a patient organization, and we're gonna fund research, and we're just gonna get this started. Anybody want in? And it was 10 families that said yes.
Wow.
And that was Memorial Day weekend of
Yep.
2011. I spent the weekend putting together crb1.org
While Michael was out at Blind Sports,
while he was
Blind
at
Sports Camp.
Capabilities. Yep.
Yep.
And we started with one little website that was 10 family stories. They all submitted a couple paragraphs and a picture of their child, and a page that said donate. That's how we began.
That's awesome. That
Yeah.
is so cool. So the eye research field has exploded over the last few years after Luxturna was approved. But what about back then? You were just talking about 13 years ago, 2011. Did people think you were crazy at the time? Because now it's a completely different scene. So what was
Well,
kind of the sort of messaging around that and the reaction to what you were doing?
Well, I mean, think about it. Here I am, no experience with this, right? And never did I ever utter the words scientific research to anyone I knew, to anyone. I was coaching Carissa soccer, right? I was
Coaching
winning
my soccer, right?
your
Aggravating all the
soccer.
dads on the other side.
Oh, that's a whole nother show we can do
That's another show. Yeah.
about how families with blind kids can really drive crazy youth sports coaches wild, but that's another show. But yeah, I was coaching, I was winning all those contests at the PTO at the elementary school, and then
Yep.
I go, I'm gonna work towards curing this blindness. We're gonna be next. There's one gene in the works, and we're gonna be next. I got to tell you, Mitch, it is a testament, and I actually talk about this on stages all around the world. It was pure passion and motivation, and I believed in this with 100% certainty, with my whole entire heart, that I could carry us at least really, really, really far. I just believed. I don't even know why. And I think it was that optimism, the passion, and maybe people were a little bit nervous if they said no to me. I don't care. There could have been
That's
an
incredible.
element there. I don't know. Maybe it was my track record of winning all those PTO contests that they said, "Hey, let's get behind this one." But the
Yeah.
town got behind us. The families put their faith in us, and we did really, really well.
How about yourself? Did you ever think you were crazy after you switched those goals from, winning donations in homerooms in elementary school for treasure jars to now trying to cure a disease that only one person in the world was talking about before you?
Oh, of course I thought it. Well, actually, I didn't necessarily think I was crazy, but I was like, "Oh my gosh, who am I to be on the I'd be on the phone like, yeah, and we're going to do this." And then I would hear like a little bit of the research and I would regurgitate it and thought that maybe they thought I knew what I was talking about. But I'll tell you this, I was doing just fine. And my parents, Granny and Pop Pop, they're like, "Kristen can do anything. We'll help you." So I had a lot of people in my corner, and
Yep.
then when I would come up against people that, like, I don't know, had a dose of reality in the field, and they're like, "How do you think that," when the one guy was like, "This little mom isn't going to make a dent in this field. She has no idea what she's doing." So that was the
Yep.
Kristen back then. cried on the couch, wanted to find out where he lived, but I didn't. But I'll tell you what, a few days later, I was like, oh my God, that guy is completely right. He's completely right. I don't know what I'm doing. But instead of saying, you know what, forget it, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to hope and pray that someday the other big foundations are going to work on this gene, I just was like, who knows what they're doing? Who can
Yeah.
help steer this ship? And that's when I
Yep.
found Irene Momany and some other folks. And they said yes to helping.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
It was cool.
Let's jump forward in time a little bit. So you started that, and then I mentioned Luxturna earlier in my question. So let's talk about that, what it is and how you were involved, because this was part of your sort of intro. It's obviously a big deal. Tell me a little about your experience with Luxturna.
Well, I wanted to know every single thing that there was going on and how I really needed to know how things were working so that we could just copy it. Why reinvent the wheel? I'm like, let's just copy it. So I found out about it. Turned out that Luxturna was being investigated and developed right here in Philly. Got to know who was on, and Dr. Dan Chung was
Yep.
he had seen you guys as patients of Eric Pierce back then at CHOP.
Back
So
with
I
all those a million tests.
Yes, with the million tests. Yeah, you and Michael are in the research for Luxturna because you guys did the obstacle course to give feedback and give numbers and give outcomes that the FDA needed. So
Well,
thank you
y'all
for
are
your
welcome.
service to
Yep.
the rare eye
So,
disease community.
we all have to make sacrifices, right? I
But
gave up a
yeah,
few
well, you guys had the
weekends. Yeah.
time of your lives with Dr. Dan. Then you just got $25 Visa cards, and it was like,
Well, Dr. Dan was the fun tests, but
oh
in
yeah,
Dr. Pierce's offices, we went up to Boston, drove 6 hours, and I
I
had to
know.
sit there for like 5 hours and tell him when I stopped seeing the light in the little dome. 5 hours.
Remember? You probably don't remember.
All the drops too.
Dr.
It's
Pierce came
brutal.
at the end of that long day and he had watched you guys. They all experienced the three of yous in those little offices all day long.
Not good. Not
And
good.
Dr. Pierce is so calm and so nice. And he said, Kristen, Michael and Mitchell are completely different right down to their retinas.
That's funny.
But anyway, so yeah, I mean Luxturna was the only thing happening for the field. It wasn't our gene. We had no business being involved in it, but I was like, everyone in this field needs to be pushing this project forward. Whatever you can do, all hands on deck, because I didn't know anything about anything as a third grade teacher, but I knew enough about building businesses and scaling things and see an impact on the world. And if one little door gets open, the rest of the genes had an avenue to go through, right?
Sure. Yep. The gold
So
standard.
I really started getting involved in a lot of advocacy. I was everywhere. I think that was right around when Facebook Live became a big thing. And I was absolutely everywhere. And then the folks from Spark, all the head leadership called me to their office in the city and they're like, who are you and what are you doing? And I gave them the Kristin Smedley has a dream for rare eye diseases speech, and they listened to pretty much every single thing I said, and I did everything I could to help them get that to the floor of the FDA. And then this little mom with a bachelor's degree in elementary education was one of 12 people in the world to be invited to testify to get Luxturna approved at the FDA. How about that?
Incredible. And it
Yeah.
succeeded, right? They approved it.
It was the fastest unanimous decision, and that was for it's called the advisory committee or AdCom. So you go and do all this testimony, and then a huge committee votes on whether to recommend that the FDA approve it, and they were
Wow.
unanimous yes. So it went to the FDA. That was in November, and then we found out 2 days before Christmas it was approved by the FDA.
Impressive.
Yeah,
Impressive.
it was really cool. And Mitch, I'll paint the picture for you. Knowing your mother as you do, you could appreciate this whole big room, right? Of all these suits and everything and all this,
Oh
like you had
yeah.
to follow all the procedures to walk up and the
You blend right in with
testimony.
that, I bet.
Oh yes, I was ready to explode by the end of the day. I'm like, oh my gosh. So they announce you see the big board and it's like, unanimous and historic time. And everybody's just like, clapping, right? And I was like, "What?" champagne. It
That's
was fun
impressive.
though because Jean Bennett
Yeah.
was there, of course, and she saw me across the room, and everybody was just like being professional, and we like ran, pushing people out of the way, and hugged in the middle of the room. It was so that's how great Jean Bennett is. It was
That's
super
amazing.
great. But yeah, and
So,
then that's opened the door for a lot of people.
so do you have any details, or is this a question for a later episode with one of the researchers on? Do you have any details on what exactly Luxturna is, like what happens in the procedure?
Oh, definitely ask the researchers that.
Yeah,
They
I
because
figured.
here's the
I
thing,
figured.
they love to explain that and they will give you 100% accurate information.
Yeah, that's the risk we run with this interview, right? With the research information.
But they basically
Um,
replace the gene that isn't working with a man-made copy of it to
sounds
make it work.
painful. That sounds painful. Yeah, sounds like they're chopping my head open or something. I'm
Well,
sure
now
it's
we're
not
just
that bad.
going down to a really
Yeah.
weird path.
Well, it's yeah. How are they going to get in the eye? I don't know. Stay tuned
We just
for
went
the
from
next
science
interview.
to sci-fi.
That's not sci-fi. It's not. I don't know. Maybe they can run a little thing up like your nose or something. Who knows?
Okay,
We'll
let's
figure
let's
it
get
out
back
in a
on
future
course
episode.
because now
Yes,
people are going to be
absolutely.
texting me all these questions.
Just the last couple questions here. So this show is here to serve as sort of a rally point for all these families, right? That want to get involved, that want to push this thing across the finish line for all these eye diseases, specifically CRB1. The others as well. So, what can families with CRB1 retinal disease do right now to help the research?
Right now it's get in touch with us. Make sure that if you are a family impacted by CRB1, that you go to crb1.org and get on our email list. You can email me at curingretinalblindness@gmail.com. I'll get you in touch with our team so that you are aware as soon as information is requested to move us forward even faster. And then when things are available, as we are starting to head into, we're making the big turn and leap towards clinical trial after all these years. It's a really
Sure.
exciting time. Another thing that you can do if you are already on our email list and in touch with us, make sure you're on the patient registry because look, let's face it, it's a rare disease. Pharma, industry does not like to typically get involved with rare and ultra rare if there's not a big ROI, a return on investment with lots of patients that they can treat. So the more numbers we have to put in front of industry and pharma, the better off we are. So make sure that you're in that registry. It also gives us an idea of how this disease progresses, where the researchers, as they're deciding, the scientists are trying to figure out what's the best case scenario in terms of intervention, when to intervene, all those things we get out of you putting your information in the patient registry. And
So a
honestly,
ton
the
more
third
data
thing,
points. Yeah.
yeah, the data points. Thank you for the real word. Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Gotcha.
Um, hashtag data points. I'm going to use that in a sentence for the next 3 days, just so I sound smarter. But the other
Yeah.
thing too is fundraising. I mean, we've gone over $4 million. It really helped that Pete Quinn got that big 1.25 NIH grant this past year. Go on the website and you'll see the updates in the blog and stuff about that. But listen, this Mitch, remember we started with Bike the Basin and cupcake
Oh yeah.
sales?
Absolutely. Go bananas, right? We were at a
Yeah, a
frozen yogurt
yogurt
shop.
night. We had a
Yeah.
sing along at the yogurt store. That's where all this began. And all of that got us here. And all of that is what we still need. So any kind of fundraising is exactly what we need to keep going.
Awesome. And like I said, this is on our Curing Retinal Blindness Foundation YouTube page. So we'll throw all those links that Kristin just mentioned, the email address, the website, the blog. We'll throw those links down in the description, make it super easy for you to find it. And finally, Kristin, thank you so much. This is how we're going to end all of the shows. Final question to you. What do you want all families impacted by rare eye diseases to know? If there was one final, closing thing you could say to all of them listening right now.
One final thing. I know we talked all about the research and the hope is here and we're moving forward and we're heading to clinical trial and all the things that families can do to keep moving the research forward. But honestly, all rare eye diseases, all people, families impacted by blindness, don't sit on the couch and wait for the cure. That's one of the worst things that you can do. Yes, get involved where you can, do the things that you can do to help the research, but really it's accessing the tools of blindness, the tools of low vision, assistive technology, whatever the things and the resources are, get access to them so that you can get out there and thrive in this world while the scientists are doing the work that they're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Kristin, you made a great pilot episode. We appreciate you. We appreciate doing. And thank you so much for joining us on this inaugural episode of Eyeing Progress. All you out there can check back next week, same place, Curing Retinal Blindness Foundation YouTube page. I'm Mitchell Smedley. I'll be there with you again. Till that time, thank you. This has been Eyeing Progress.